What's happening, fandoms?
Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here,
We react to music videos and shows.
today we're going back to new Rockstars, breaking down Ahsoka episode 7. This show has been just chock full of lore and history and Easter eggs, and we're expecting Eric to show us the way.
And more stuff that we've missed.
That's right. So here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Star Wars Ahsoka Episode 7, Dreams and Madness, which is, I think, my favorite phrase to be uttered on Ahsoka this season by Balin back in Episode 6.
This is a land of dreams and madness. Children's stories come to life.
In this episode, from C-3PO shutting up a droid-hating senator to Thrawn giving the best ever what to who Ahsoka's master was, I got you covered with all the visual and symphonic details you might have missed in translations of all visible Orbash. And thank you again so much for supporting New Rockstars and our analyses of Ahsoka. It's been a lot of fun to try to figure out what this show is week to week with you all.
Yeah.
And as much as I miss sleeping, writing and shooting these late into the night, the part of the night that's
see
darkest
any,
just before the dawn, I think
eye
is
bags on
where
him.
the magic happens. So to all you Wednesday Wookiees, thanks for joining me on this ride. Okay, the opening Lucasfilm bumper comes with this music from composer Kevin Kiner.
Yeah, eerie.
Which the closed captioning calls soft ethereal music. Roughly the same description used for Ahsoka's moment connecting with Sabine through the Force later.
I see her.
Happy Halloween from Clotho. So really, at the beginning of this episode, we're hearing the music of the Force connection between these two, but by connecting with each other, they're opening themselves up to that frequency, getting hijacked by nefarious trackers. Really, this episode leaves us with so many questions about these witches. But this episode really opens on Coruscant in the era of the New Republic. We see a New Republic government building, which is a different building than the prequel era Senate building. On this building's frontal facade is the symbol of the Coruscant Guard, which also appears over the courtroom. The Coruscant Guard were a corps of clone shock troopers with red armor who served as Coruscant's military police force, first seen in Revenge of the Sith, but showed up throughout Clone Wars. Beneath that hangs a blue banner that likely has a much smaller golden New Republic crest on it. This reminds us of the New Republic banner that hung over the Amnesty Program building in The Mandalorian Chapter 19. Earlier that episode, Dr. Pershing spoke at the Coruscant Opera House that we saw in Revenge of the Sith, but there is a larger building on Coruscant that looks like this one, at least in the nighttime shot of the city in that episode of The Mandalorian. Either way, I just find it interesting that the architecture of this previous age, where there were clones, hasn't been fully paved over yet, and the New Republic is just kind of sufficing it by draping paltry banners over everything, mission accomplished style. But that said, technically the seat of the New Republic government is on Chandrila, Mon Mothma's homeworld, not Coruscant. In this era, the capital rotates among the core worlds, so it seems like they just set up this hearing in a repurposed police HQ. Like Senator Xiono doesn't want to give Hera a huge platform on the main Chandrilan Senate floor and kind of just wants to convict her here in a Star Wars traffic court. So yeah, here Hera stands trial. And notice that she wears her headpiece, but not the goggles.
I did not notice that.
Wrong, like Ahsoka without her headband, and it just kind of like had the weird hairline. It's just like too smooth. Now I know Hera is not piloting anything right now, but you know, I just kind of like my Hera ready to go Amelia Earhart style. But you know, like the first part of Amelia's flight, oh god. Hera faces a panel of Chancellor Mon Mothma, as well as Senator Hamato Xiono, returning from episode 3. Xiono is father to Kazuda Xiono from the animated Star Wars Resistance show, as well as Senator Marwood from episode 3. Now, back then there was a Gran Senator and Senator Rodrigo joining them, but now on this panel is a certain familiar Mon Calamari. Yeah, this is definitely Admiral Akbar with the same head coloration, the same Admiral badge. It's a rap sheet. I tried to force it in there. Sorry about that. But there's also a Celestin, which of course is the same race as Nien Nunb. Now this ain't Nien. He shows up in The Rise of Skywalker years after this and doesn't look this old. This Celestin has a handlebar mustache and he's my best friend. Among the observers in the gallery are a bunch of human New Republic officials. There's an Ishi Tib and a white chin Mon Calamari. There's an Ithorian race, and there seems to be a Mon Calamari prosecutor for the state and for the defense. Dun, 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 dun. Chopper and Hera's first officer, Vic Hawkins. Meanwhile, the chains at the pendant that Mon Mothma wear to clasp her cape look very much like the ones worn by Caroline Blackiston when she played the character in Return of the Jedi. Now, as the panel deliberates, the doors whoosh open and in struts Captain Carson Teva in a flyboy jacket. Even that Ishi Tib and the Mon Calamari behind Hera lean over to each other, clearly saying something like, "Get this man into Poe and Finn's Brotherhood of the Traveling Jacket." Xiono dismisses Hera's report as a Jedi fairy tale, reading,
Jedi. False Jedi. Star maps, star whales, distant galaxies. Honestly, are we to believe any of it?
Now, Balin also described these events as children's stories come to life. And it just kind of feels like a meta defense from Dave Filoni on his version of Star Wars, that just because something sounds like a kid's story with magical wolves and witches doesn't mean it isn't plausible and cool. Xiono completely objects to Hera's mention of Imperial Remnant, calling it sensationalism, reminding us of the kind of people in our world who get offended on behalf of neo-Nazis when you call neo-Nazis out for doing neo-Nazi things. Meanwhile, Carson Teva will not stand for this.
What about the conflict on Mandalore?
Gideon was a warlord acting on his own. There's no proof of a greater conspiracy.
This line confirms the timeline of these Star Wars series. Ahsoka is definitely set after the events of The Mandalorian Season 3, which ended with Moff Gideon's base on Mandalore. And Gideon was not acting alone. He met with the pro-Imperial Shadow Council. He was working on clones of himself, and on that Shadow Council was Gilad Pellaeon, Thrawn's right-hand man from the Timothy Zahn novels, and someone who actually made a voice cameo in the Rebels finale. I'm actually beginning to think Senator Xiono might have been bought off by this council. But then again, her voice returns.
I am C-3PO.
I love how Mon Mothma completes his sentence. Anthony Daniels returns to play the character, at least to voice him, because if you look closely at the costume, I just don't know if that's Anthony Daniels. The guy's getting up there in age. If you take a look at 3PO's neck here, it just looks a lot thicker than usual. The head is a bit tilted back when Anthony Daniels, as like an expert mime actor, always has a very specific way he holds the character and typically leans his head forward and pulls his shoulders back. But either way, 3PO is here on behalf of Senator Leia Organa, and it's just such a nice workaround since, you know, Carrie Fisher's no longer with us. We can't really have
show
Leia
her
here in person unless they were to do some like nightmarish Rise of Skywalker VFX that none of us really need right now. Just having 3PO instead works so great. Actually, if you listen closely when that guard is giving him guff, you can hear 3PO saying, he says, "How rude!" exactly the same way as he does to that Cloud City Protocol droid in Empire Strikes Back who swears "Ichuta" at him.
Oh, nice to see a familiar face. Ichuta. How rude.
Ichuta is a Huttese profanity. Naturally, as 3PO introduces himself, we do hear a leitmotif of John Williams' main Star Wars theme. And remember, Hera and 3PO actually met in Rebels Season 1, Episode 3, Droids in Distress, which ends by revealing 3PO and R2-D2 were researching the crew of the Ghost on behalf of Bail Organa, which would later lead to Hera joining the Phoenix Squadron. So she really has 3PO
We'll get to all that eventually.
3PO and Leia are covering for Hera, saying that Leia ordered the mission to CTOS.
Being regrettably unaware that Senator Xiono had held a vote against such a mission. Without her.
Yeah, the way 3PO leaves that pause before without her is so great. He's kind of making this political charge, an implication that Xiono rushed the vote without allowing the great Senator Leia Organa to be present for it. Moves like this, though, are going to eventually cost Leia a lot of political capital and leave her with fewer allies when she's ousted during the events of the Bloodline novel. We learn that Leia is currently leader of the Defense Council, which will probably set her up to form her own militarized faction, the Resistance, after she leaves. Now, Xiono makes a big mistake. He says that they can't admit evidence from a droid, and Chopper is ready to leap across that dais
and war crime him.
Stick around to the outro of this video to see what Chopper does next. Yeah, we got a post-credit scene of this video. You're gonna stick around all the way to the end. Now, there is a screen on the far side of this room with Orbesh text. Across the top of it translates to New Republic, and then on the right, Hall of Justice Docket. Now, the scrolling Orbesh beneath on the right is kind of hard to make out, but I can see the word case in a few instances, C-A-S-E, so it's probably just case numbers on the docket for that day. But on the left side of the screen are red and blue cells that might correspond to the red and blue lines on that star map grid, which could refer to possible legal jurisdictions where these crimes were committed. And a reminder that the galactic star map had new boundary lines drawn by Imperial cartographers during the Age of the Empire that didn't always align with the way rebel factions would organize. This is something that was discussed by the ISB in the show Andor. Remember that show where they could just get a lot of interesting, juicy drama out of a debate over legal jurisdictions? Okay, moving on to Ahsoka. Still in hyperspace with the Purgle, Ahsoka trains with both of her lightsabers now, holding both reverse like daggers, reminding us of Ahsoka in the later seasons of Clone Wars when she wielded her green lightsaber and her shorter yellow-green Shoto blade. Hayden Christensen returns as Anakin Skywalker, wearing his Clone Wars era Jedi armor with the crest on the pauldron, and he says,
"In this war, you will face more than just droids.
Grievous.
General Grievous is Asajj Ventress, even Count Dooku.
Yeah, and it seems like since encountering Anakin in the World Between Worlds, Ahsoka is back to being comfortable with her old master, seeing him not as a painful memory to block out, but a source of inspiration. And yes, this was a recording made during the Clone Wars. We know who Grievous is and Dooku is, but some of you might not know who Asajj Ventress is. Shame on you!
We do.
Shame. Just kidding.
We've
We make
seen
these
her.
videos for everybody. So here's who Asajj Ventress is. She's
We
an awesome
know.
character, a recurring villain in the Clone Wars series. She's a Dathomirian warrior who served as Dooku's acolyte.
Oh, she's
aspiring apprentice. She
Dathomirian.
actually
Interesting.
rejoined her Dathomirian Night Sisters in Clone Wars Season 4. They baptized her into the Coven, and this is around the time when the Night Sisters came into conflict with Grievous and Dooku. And sorry to disappoint you, Asajj Ventress is dead now, but who knows? This show is obsessed with Night Sister history. She might come up again. Maybe she's in one of those coffins. That'd be fun. Probably
Oh.
not. Now we hear Anakin's recording say,
As your master, it's my responsibility to prepare you, so practice these forms often, or at least more than I do.
so beyond Anakin's recurring training throughout the Clone Wars series, this recording actually reminds us of two things. Rebels, Season 2, Episode 18, Shroud of Darkness, when Ahsoka actually listens to a different recording alongside Ezra.
I've made some adjustments to the classic Form 4 techniques that I think you'll find work well against droids and other ranged attackers. Here.
And by using two sabers during this training session, Ahsoka is essentially doing Form 4, applying the new lessons that Anakin prescribed after messing things up in his 2-on-1 saber fight with Dooku in Attack of the Clones. But specifically, Anakin saying the words, "As your master, it's my responsibility to prepare you," echoes Tales of the Jedi Episode 5, when Anakin puts Ahsoka through a test beyond droid combat using Rex and clone troopers to try to stun her over and over and over again.
This is about life and death. And as your master, I'm responsible for you.
Now, Anakin goes on to say in this episode,
If you can hold off Rex and the boys, you'll be ready for anything on the battlefield. Well, yeah, anything with a blaster at least.
chillingly, this episode of Tales of the Jedi ends with Ahsoka and Rex flashing forward to the Clone Wars series finale right before they face other clone troopers during Order 66. So dramatic, so amazing, because Ahsoka will have to put this clone trooper defense to the test. Also, fun fact, young Kanan Jarrus, then known as Caleb Doom, cameos early on this episode as a fanboy totally crushing hard on Ahsoka's moves. It's a really good episode. You should watch it. It's only like, 12 minutes or something. Now, the recording says,
If we get separated or something happens, you need to be able to make it on your own. Don't be afraid. Just remember what I taught you and trust your instinct.
and I like how right on the words "taught you," the framing aligns with Ahsoka's blade right against Anakin's face. Now, while this is a recording, it just feels like Anakin is talking to her in real time. And
Yeah.
It's kind of wonderful.
And she
I know
nods
you can
back
do
to
this.
him. She's timed her training to
But it's also kind of sad.
Coincide
because it reminds
with
me
his-
of that scene in Minority Report when Tom Cruise talks to the recording of his dead son as if it's a conversation in real time. Ahsoka says Anakin made 20 more of these recordings, and this was his last one.
He made 20 or more of these recordings. This was his last one. He was a good master.
And
yeah.
the music swell after this line kind of sounds like Yoda's theme. It kind of feels like she's saying this out loud to Balin, who used her doubt about Anakin's incomplete tutelage against her. And I hope some of the other 20 recordings were just Anakin bitching about Obi-Wan or rehearsing what he was going to say to Padme that day. I like sand, or I hate sand. I hate sand. I hate sand. Coarse, rough, irritating, gets everywhere. How do I get everywhere with her? Now, inside Ahsoka's locker are a few training remote droids, like the one Luke trained with on the Falcon, and like the ones Ahsoka wrecked while she was training at the beginning of that Tales of the Jedi episode. We see one yellow, one blue, and one green here. Hu Yang debates with Ahsoka about the odds.
Okay,
the
I
Purgle
missed
took them
those.
to the right galaxy, even.
I think the odds are pretty good.
No, in fact, they're terrible. Astronomically terrible.
Yes, droids like this are always acutely aware of the probabilities.
Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
Actually, speaking of that moment in Empire Strikes Back, the T6 having to fly through this minefield definitely parallels that asteroid field after the Hoth escape. And actually later, Hu Yang says,
We're going to get pulverized if we stay out here much longer.
which is a lot like what they're saying when they're trying to get out of the asteroid field. Now, these mines in the minefield are called orbital mines, and they actually first appeared in the Poe Dameron annual comic #1. What we see here is an insane number of them. TIE fighters can supposedly hold 6 of these at a time, but I don't know how Thrawn would have had this many of them after being suddenly exiled to Peridea.
Yeah,
I guess the
that's
Chimera
a
just had like a
lot.
whole bunch of them. I like how the Purgle all nope out of this mess, so apparently Peridea is not the end of their road. They
So
can
they
also
didn't
swim
die.
upstream
They
as well as
weren't.
they can
They
swim
left.
downstream. From the Eye of Sion comes 9 of the fighters that we saw back in episode 3. Star Wars has officially called these RP-82 into Fiend fighters, or that might just be the name of Shin's fighter in particular. But in the past, I pointed out how their design seems to be based in part on the Clone Wars era Belbelab 22, as well as the real-world MiG-15 that was a Soviet fighter used in the Korean conflict in the early 50s, as well as the P-51 Mustang and the F-2F Brewster Buffalo. Ahsoka uses these floating bones of the Purrgil in the ring of the planet as cover from these fiends, so whether the Purrgil are alive or dead, they're just going to be used as cover. So on the surface of Peridea, we get this shot of the Chimera over the fortress, and all the statues that we talked about in the last episode seem to be bent backwards so that the faces are facing up. In addition to their silhouettes reflecting the columns of Malachor in the Rebels Season 2 finale, I'm still wondering about the functions of these towers, and again, I think it's possible that they're just kind of like radio beacons that can blast Night Sister voices wherever they need them to go. Now, we have to talk about how this fortress was actually built by the Zepho, it sounds like. The Zepho are an ancient race of Dathomir-linked force wielders in the game Jedi Fallen Order. Last week, you may remember, I spotted some of that Sith Urkatat runes above the door of the fortress, and actually Tommy J. Wall on Twitter came through with this translation: praise Kujet, ruler of all, may his reign last for all time. Kujet was the cruel leader of the Zepho, and it's actually his tomb you explore in the Jedi Fallen Order game. So from this, we know the Zepho and the Dathomiri have this kind of parallel ancestry, as both of them are races from another galaxy who immigrated to the planet of Dathomir in our galaxy after leaving this place. But it seems like some of the Dathomiri had to stay behind. There are also some Zepho hieroglyphs from Jedi Fallen Order on the exterior balcony wall behind Thrawn in that one scene in episode 6 after he lets Sabine take off. Hieroglyphs that, if we're not mistaken, also seem to appear on the arch of the Coruscant courtroom behind the dais. So I don't know, maybe the set designers of the show are just throwing them in everywhere. Morgan Elsbeth hands Thrawn research on Ahsoka from the Inquisitorial Database, referring to the Jedi Hunters, the Inquisitors, of which Marok was one, making me wonder how long he was being Night Sister puppeted under that Inquisitor armor. How many people are they puppeting within different organizations of Star Wars? But we actually know Ahsoka's name was written in Orbesh on the Inquisitors list in that 2017 Darth Vader #7 comic. And Thrawn realizes
her master was General Anakin Skywalker.
An important fact that I'm actually surprised he didn't already know: she famously served alongside Anakin Skywalker in a number of Clone Wars battles as a commander, but really in this moment, I think Thrawn is putting together that her master became Darth Vader.
However, we are getting to know our adversary, and if she's anything like her master, she'll be unpredictable and quite dangerous.
And Thrawn continues,
Why we must control all variables. Put her on a path of her own choosing, so that no matter which direction she takes, we'll always be one step ahead of her.
Yeah, this is the Thrawn we know from Rebels and the Timothy Zahn novels. He often lets his enemies escape so that they can play right into his bigger plan. Ezra and Sabine, meanwhile, are traveling with the Noti, whose homes have turned into mobile trailers like covered wagons. A toddler Noti waves at them, and it looks like this toddler has a knitted plush doll of a Noti. Ezra wears a kind of scaled chainmail, which some have speculated could be made of Stormtrooper dog tags, but we have to note that Stormtroopers in Star Wars have never been known to have dog tags. If they were, they'd probably be Imperial insignia, you know, not like real world American GI dog tags. Also, wearing dog tags of like dozens of Stormtroopers that he killed would just be, I think, a more violent move than this Jesus era of Ezra seems to be up for. Ezra and Sabine recap the events of the end of the original trilogy.
The Empire was defeated.
Battle of Endor.
The Emperor died.
Because he's missing for all of this.
That's what people say, huh? Sabine's skepticism sounded a bit like our first step toward this.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Poor Oscar Isaac. He gets dragged for that too much. You're a great actor, Oscar Isaac. They just gave you some poopy dialogue to say. Also, Ezra clarifies that Zeb is training recruits. And it's our first mention of Zeb on this series. Finally, we have one more episode. And we know Lucasfilm made a live action Zeb for that cameo in The Mandalorian. So if we don't get a reunion between Zeb and Ezra in this finale, we're going to riot. Ezra is surprised that Ahsoka took Sabine on as an apprentice.
I don't know Zeb.
Trained a little before, back when I was first learning.
I remember.
He's referencing Sabine's brief training with the Darksaber under Kanan Jarrus in the Rebels Season 3 episode Trials of the Darksaber, one of the best of the Rebels series, definitely watch it. We see the Great Mothers, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropa arriving, and we see why Thrawn let Ahsoka go so that she could try to sync with Sabine, and that would ping the Force cell phone towers for these Night Sisters to triangulate her position. It's interesting to see Morgan joining this ritual, chanting along. The Night Sisters are a coven. Their sorcery is probably amplified by their outnumbered numbers. But these Night Sisters immediately respond to Thrawn without hesitating. They call him our Lord. So why are the Night Sisters so loyal to Thrawn? Well,
what
as
did he do?
Shin talked about last episode, they are desperate to flee Peridia, and Thrawn's ship and the Eye of Sion seem to be their best bet. But I do sense that the moment they'll get what they want from him, they're going to turn on him. They're just flattering his ego to butter him up. Bendu did warn that Thrawn would be defeated with many arms and a cold embrace, and if that didn't apply to the Purgle, it could apply to the zombified Night Brothers and Night Sisters in those caskets. As Ahsoka and Hu Yang wait, notice how the T6 is covered in these tiny creatures, which kind of resemble plankton. Plankton do break down sea particles in the ocean. Maybe these are space plankton breaking down the bones of the Purgle. There is a such thing in Star Wars known as air shrimp, but those are like on the border of atmospheres. These are just in open space. But I like the idea of seeing these aquatic-esque creatures because they may actually be helping Ahsoka mentally return to an aquatic headspace of the world between worlds, because when she channels the Force, the sound does drop away as if she's being plunged into something or in a kind of sensory deprivation tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Then Ahsoka looks directly at the camera and says,
I see her.
ooh, that thud on Clotho's eyes opening is just so scary. Ahsoka goes from thinking she's talking to Sabine, her sister figure, to instead locking eyes with a Night Sister witch that she didn't know was on this group chat. It's kind of like Dorothy trying to talk to Annie M in the crystal ball, but instead it's actually the Wicked Witch of the West messing with her. Always scared the crap out of me as a kid. Thrawn tells Shin to kill Sabine and Ezra.
Then take your place in the coming empire.
Wow, so it seems like Baylan is sensing Shin's interest in the political power Thrawn is promising, and Baylan's divergence from that goal. So does Baylan know that Thrawn is setting them up as bait? Does Baylan willingly throw Shin under the bus here? Well, not necessarily. I think he is trying to set up Shin to take the path that is best for her.
Your ambition drives you in one direction. My path lies in another.
This actually ties into their namesake, the wolves of Norse mythology, Skoll and Hati. Skoll pursues the sun, the source of light. Hati pursues the moon, which is a mere reflection of the sun's light. Skoll is after something deeper than Hati. So what is that thing? I've speculated Bendu, the Mortis gods, the Wellspring priestesses, but in yesterday's video I talked about Den of Nerds theory, Abeloth. Watch yesterday's video for more information on that. Maybe he's after that Zepho Kujit, maybe the Rakatans. I love how we still have no idea, but I would say of the various options, the closest to the sun, really, I think our best bets are Bendu or the priestesses of the Wellspring of Life, or just something completely undefined yet. By the way, crazy detail about Baylan, spotted by Twitter user Nira592, Baylan's wrist has an Orbesh list of names. Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, R2-D2, C-3PO, and Ben. If this is just a Star Wars set designer Easter egg, that Ben would be old Ben Kenobi, but if it is a hit list of some kind, hey, Ben Solo is around 5 years old right now. He's not Kylo Ren yet. He's just a little boy. Thrawn's night troopers load into some LAAT LE patrol gunships. Thrawn doesn't send in the TIE fighters. Why? To avoid using resources. He wants to get Ahsoka on the ground and take up as much time as possible. Later, when these land, you can see some Orbesh on the side of the ship reading load point, and then up on the cylinder, the thing that looks like a vent, it reads vent. So the Noti caravan ends up in a chase that kind of feels a lot like John Ford's Stagecoach, which really every Western wagon chase that you see in movies is pulling from. One Noti uses a slingshot, which was one of Ezra's favorite weapons to use back in his pre-lightsaber Dennis the Menace phase in Rebel Season 1. Ezra shouts whoopa whoopa to circle up the caravan, and they seal themselves up the way they do in their shells when they hide. When pioneers would do this, this is actually where the term circle the wagons comes from, as this would be how pioneers would protect the vulnerable in their caravan from outside raiders. Ahsoka jumps out of the T6 and rolls up to Baylan. And here you can see what a lot of folks have been chatting about, the green crystal on his belt buckle, which might be his old Kyber crystal before he replaced it with an orange one and his old Jedi hilt. And one new detail that I just spotted is that Shin seems to have chunks of that same green crystal in her Padawan braid, only now visible in the exterior light. So Baylan may have given her pieces of this broken Kyber, both keeping the crystal close. Whereas Ahsoka back on Cetos first only used one blade while fighting Baylan. Now she ignites both of them, confident in her training from Anakin to use the 4-4 style that he never truly mastered against Dooku in Attack of the Clones, because the last time he used two blades, he gave into the dark side to do it to Dooku. This time, Ahsoka has transformed into Ahsoka the White, and Baylan, shaming her over her connection to Vader, no longer holds her back. Meanwhile, Ezra turns down his lightsaber.
That was not what I expected.
An ally, because our man uses force pushes and even it looks like a possible Force kick, because we totally hear the Force on that kick, but it might just be a non-contact stunt, kind of like Luke's classic Force kick in Return of the Jedi. Yes, that's definitely what that was. It just kind of seems like there are a few obvious non-contact hits in this fight. But Ahsoka's duel with Baylan is mixed with interesting flute sounds. And listen closely when Baylan shoves her back. Yeah, it kind of seems like the flute peaks out there. It's a battle of musical frequencies, and I love it. Shin swipes at Ezra and singes some of his hair.
Close.
The way he dodges her blows reminds me of Luke's force projection fighting Kylo Ren in The Last Jedi, or Chirrut Imwe dodging stuff. But then this awesome moment happens. Yeah, Shin's lightsaber blade contracts, reacting to Ezra's use of the Force. Lightsabers are supposed to channel the energy of the user, so this is basically Ezra showing his mastery over the Force compared to Shin. The gunships approach, and Ezra starts making some classic Rebels Ezra quips here, but the two of them get impatient. Remember, Baylan's advice to Shin about impatience, it proves true here. It gives Shin the upper hand. Meanwhile, there's another fun musical sting with Ahsoka's duel with Baylan.
Can't defeat me.
Yeah, these piano chords we actually heard over Baylan's death march in the opening sequence of the season. Ahsoka says that she doesn't have to beat Baylan and uses Huyang's cover fire to escape, and we stay with Baylan for a long take as he's thinking this over. He's further along his path as his wolf chases the sun. And you all know, I was looking at the background like crazy, looking for any Bendu-esque stirring among these land formations. Nothing yet, but I will keep looking. And I love that we see Thrawn is commanding all these units on a hexagonal board display. Like he's treating all these pieces like he's playing Djarik, hollow chess. While dueling Shin, Sabine uses her Vambrace to block a lightsaber hit. So yeah, that Vambrace must be Beskar. The night troopers surround them. One actually has red cloth coming out of his helmet eye holes, and we hear them all shouting, "Go, go, 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 go!" And when they die, they do not burst into green mist
I noticed
the way Marok
that.
did. So I think it's safe to say that these guys are not zombified death troopers from Joe Schreiber's 2009 book, not corpses being reanimated with Night Sister magic, but just kind of worn down stormtroopers. I gotta say, they were a lot scarier when they were just chanting Thrawn's name last episode, but I do think necromancy is still in play with those coffins. Thrawn is pleasantly surprised by this defeat.
What a rare sight. Almost like the Jedi of old.
Jedi of old. Kind of wonder how old Thrawn is referring to, because I think what's most impressive is how little these Jedi relied on their lightsabers, recalling the way Yoda initially confronted Dooku
she
without
didn't
using
even
his
draw
lightsaber to attack the
hers.
clones. Or again, our man Chirrut Imwe as a guardian of the wills, the Jedi of old. Thrawn reveals the whole point of this battle was just to stall. His holo display shows the Chimera with the containers loaded in, the red Orbesh text translates to cargo load, and the number ticks up from 81 to 83 to 85. Why 2 at a time? Do they got those corpses doubled up head to toe in each of those? Also, does it really take 3 days to move like 100 coffins when you got a few hundred night troopers and these coffins float? Are 4 out of 5 of these things coffin flopping? Oh! Thrawn says,
Time is very much on our side now, and I should keep it that way.
Time. Now, I assume Thrawn is just talking about being a step ahead of the game, but hey, we got 1 episode left, folks. We could see hyperspace time travel as of yet. Probably not, but a nerd can dream. Ahsoka reunites with Sabine, and then a big hug with Ezra, followed by, I think, the first laugh that we've heard from Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. Ezra ends the episode with,
Guys, I'm getting a feeling. I think I might be going home after all.
what is home to Ezra? Is it just a planet of Lothal, or is it just anywhere so long as he's sharing a bunk with Zeb? No clue how they're gonna get back to our main galaxy. If all the Purgle have gotten the f out, maybe Ezra could activate his dormant link to these whales, combined with Ahsoka's fresher hook that she got by making eye contact with that Purgle back on Cetos. Or my hope is that they just pull an Ezra favorite and disguise himself with some of these dead Night Trooper armor and reverse coffin flop into those caskets as they hitch a ride on the Chimera and the Eye of Sion.
That was my thing. That might
Chimera,
hit you right.
I hope they find those Lothal ruined chunks and Ezra finds Kanan's lightsaber among Thrawn's collection.
Ooh.
Let me know how you want this season to end, and be sure to watch New Rockstars episode 7 reaction on the break room. Maud and Brandon did an amazing job reacting to this episode, and stay tuned for a special finale predictions video that Tommy Bechtold and I are going to co-host here on the main channel over the weekend. And again, we got a post-credit scene to this video that you don't want to miss.
Okay,
so please
let's
support this channel by
see
grabbing
their
an
post-video.
Ahsoka-inspired Fulcrum shirt available at nerdright.shop. Be sure to subscribe to the break room for episodes of WikiLeaks, our Ahsoka After Show. Subscribe to all 3 channels of the New Rockstars Network. Big thanks to Noah Chen for helping write and research this breakdown. You can follow me at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars. Thanks for watching. watching. And without further ado, late last night, we all wondered exactly how pissed off Chopper was at Senator Ziono, and our amazingly talented editor Drew Coombs came up with an answer. Enjoy.
The court cannot admit evidence of this kind from a mere droid.
Transfer to manual control.
Oh boy. This is all Chopper? Okay, well, they keep going on and on about how everybody thinks Chopper is a war criminal and he's responsible for killing lots and lots of people. So that's all, I guess, a big joke about him just killing the entire planet of Coruscant because he's mad that Senator Ziono
Never know.
called C-3PO a mere droid. Got it. I totally missed the music in the background during the fights. I didn't hear that until Eric pointed it out. That weird flute sound kind of reminded me a little bit of the Mandalorian or maybe the Boba Fett theme. But the fact that Eric was thinking that Ahsoka connected directly to the Night Sister when she was trying to connect to Sabine.
I was kind of surprised on that part.
Yeah,
she intercepted
with her face flashing up and that thump.
Yeah.
It was like a jump scare, and I was just viewing it as like a theatrical cut, like a flash cut or a match cut, because it went from one face to another face. But really, I think it could be that she did intercept her trying to connect. But also Sabine responded. Like she clearly felt something. So maybe she just was able to detect what they were connecting, not necessarily intercept it or whatever. Yeah, wow. I am so looking forward to the finale.
Of course.
I
wonder if they make it longer than this one.
This was a pretty short episode, actually. It was only like 40 minutes total. It felt very, very short. But yeah, I mean, they've got so much to do in this last episode. They have to resolve, is Thrawn going back? What's in these coffins?
Gonna get out?
Where is Balin going? What is he looking for? What's going to happen with
who knows?
Shin Hati? How do our crew get back
to the other
galaxy? And if they stow away on the Thrawn ship, do they leave the ghost ship behind?
Oh no.
Or the Fulcrum, I guess it is. She doesn't fly the Ghost, but man, it's so much stuff that we're excited to see. This has been one of the best Star Wars series that we've seen in a long time, in my opinion. So I'm very much enjoying it.
To be continued.
Yep.
Oh, thank you again for tuning into our channel. Don't forget to give your love and support to the new Rockstar. The link will be in our description below. Thank you.
Go give them a sub.
Your love and support to our channel, and also subscribing to our small mighty channel to help us grow. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.